do I start? My name is John Spignesi, and this is our story.
Spigs and Mitch here on WESU Middletown. That was amazing. Thank you very much. So I got to ask, where did it all begin for you? First of all, are you a Connecticut native or did you move here?
I am. I'm a Connecticut native. I'm from Branford.
Okay.
Born and raised. I actually met Mitch at an open mic that used to happen at Donovan's Reef every Thursday. It went on for 5 years or so, long time.
I think maybe that you were playing around a lot of older players at the Reef. I mean, everyone who came to the Reef were quality musicians who you got to play with right off the bat. See, that didn't happen for me like that, where I didn't get to play at your. It took me longer, but you were right off the bat. Were playing around a lot of really good players.
I was in another band, and then I formed kind of like a solo project with him, and that other band, is since disbanded, but we've been kind of going at it ever since and having some fun.
So when did it begin for you as far as doing your own thing?
2014, 2015. Mm-hmm. So we've been at it for a few years. We just celebrated our 3-year anniversary.
But you've been at it.
Oh, yeah.
Your name's all over the place, which is good.
I started showing up because I moved back to the shoreline, and things with my last band had kind of started to really dissipate, and I was looking just to play with anybody, and anybody called me one night and said, hey, do you want to join my band? And I told him, I said, I do have another band that I'm playing with at this point in time, and so, I can do this as, like a part-time thing. John had Off the Dome at that point in time.
In college, I met these two guys that I'd eventually be in a band with for around 5 years or so. And, it's since disbanded. But that band, Off the Dome, taught me how to take myself a little more seriously as a musician. I'd always kind of fiddled around, but I don't think I would have considered myself a musician at the time. I was more so a guy that played guitar, if that makes any sort of sense. Off the Dome was starting to take breaks in the winter to write and record, and I had found this newfound passion for playing out live a lot. That was my way of almost practicing on stage, because I began to improvise a lot more, listening to bands like the Grateful Dead and Jerry Garcia and the Allman Brothers Band and Max Creek and so many more. So, Off the Dome took their break, but I was still, jonesing to play. So I told Bob, about Off the Dome's break, and he agreed. He said, you got to keep playing. You're going to get rusty. And I wanted to do something. I didn't know what to do, but I wanted to do something. So he said, why don't we do a little something, you and I? And it started to grow. And I started to think about, the Jerry Garcia Band, how he had these two backup singers. And there was, it was his way of, keeping his chops up. And I was very much inspired by Jerry at the time. And I really enjoyed everything that he had, brought to the musical table, if you will. So Bob and I got together, and we recruited Matt, who like I said, we had played with at Donovan's, and Mitch. Mitch was one of the first additions, and then we added a trumpet player, Joe Stein. We added a vocalist, Leah Stone, and then another backing vocalist, Shauna Nilsson. And that was pretty much the birth of the John Spignesi Band.
It grew very
quick. It was very quick. It almost seemed like it was like overnight, and all of a sudden there's like 8 people in this group,
Yeah.
And I remember
Andre was last, right?
Andre's. I had started working at Brantford High School, and then I remember that I was walking by down the hall one day, and I heard Bob Marley coming from this classroom. I walked in, and he was like, he's got like these little like drums kind of like, and I'm like, oh, do you like play? He's like, I just like kind of mess around. I never actually did. And then we had our anniversary show at the Reef coming up. I remember it was the 1-year anniversary of the band. That was his first show. And then we had a gig the next night at Brennan's Sheben.
Yes.
In Bridgeport.
I remember that was a good night.
And I asked him right then. I think right as soon as I was like, so do you want to like join the band? And he was in. Yeah. And it was a 9-piece at that point, I think.
I remember Matt was extremely happy about it.
Oh yeah. Well, it was such a pleasure for him to be able to play alongside someone.
Partner in crime to work on, to do that thing with.
And formed in 2015, what is unique about this band is that when they perform, they do a lot of live shows, but when they perform, they don't have a set list. They don't have a set list that they, write up, where they plan ahead and they write it down on a paper and they tape it to the stage or whatever, They don't have one of those.
In any other band, I would probably have to... I don't know. I think I'd have to take some kind of Xanax or something. Whereas, with this band, one of the chief attributes is that we're not just in our own little worlds. Yeah, it's just that we're listening to each other, and I assume that John will point out, what the actual chord is if I'm too far from it. And if I'm anywhere in it, he'll think I'm a genius and just let me just scribble all over the place. So I'm really going to get away with murder as long as we don't start using set lists again.
So JSB was playing a lot of mostly local places. We were playing the Latrim and Donovan's Reef, which were two great spots. The Latrim has since closed, but Donovan's Reef is still running strong, and they still have us about twice a year, and we really enjoy playing there. But everything kind of changed when Off the Dome broke up. Stone broke up, I had no idea what kind of route that my musical career was going to take. I'd been in this band for 5 years, and I had felt that it was the only group I actually had a future with. When we decided to call it quits, the four of us, it was a mutual decision. I remember talking to Matt on the phone, and it was very clear that I was upset over it still, regardless of it being a mutual decision. We were still upset over this project that I had been in part of for 5 years, had suddenly come to a screeching halt. So one of the first things Matt said to me, I called him up and I was talking to him, and there was a slight pause on the phone, and he said, "So can I expect that we're going to be a lot busier now?" And it's funny. It wasn't until he said that I had even considered that a possibility. We had grown JSB as a band so much in, such a short time. We had departed with some members, of a couple vocalists, and a horn player. We had gotten rid of them, and we had really started to refine our sound. We added Andre Swolar as a full-time member. He was playing percussion. So we had this 5-man lineup that we were just really proud of, with just a lot to offer. Bob had left too at the time, so I remember thinking, if we're gonna move this band along, if we're gonna, keep it strong, we're gonna need to find another bass player, and that's when I met Tom Guthrie.
I actually could probably page back to the conversation because Matt, the drummer, and I have known each other for 30 years. In fact, before I started playing, and I've promised him that in another 30 years I'll learn to actually count beats or whatever his silly people do with the sticks. He called me and said, "Hey, do you want to come play bass in this band I'm in?" And I was afraid it was the one with Ed Murnane, and it wasn't, so I was cool. And he said, "Oh, well, it's JSB, it's the John Spignesi Band," and I learned how to pronounce John's name, which was cool, and eventually. And I said, "Well, my next question." He said, "Yes, you'll get paid." And so I said, "Sure, I'll come down and try out."
So we launched into a couple of original songs that he had never even heard before, and he nailed them.
I didn't realize I was coming down to practice, actually, and that whole process had been bypassed by my agent, Matthew Alling. But I came in, and Mitch shook my hand and said, "Play as many notes as you want." And I was like, "Well, I think we can make this work."
Tom joined us in October of 2017, played his first show on November 10th, 2017 at Riddle's Pub in Naugatuck, Connecticut. We're still doing it today. We've grown a lot and changed a lot over the years, but if there's anything that we can say about this band, it truly is music for your soul.
Waking up, I know what I need. You are the air that I breathe. Smiling gets me through the day. Seeing you, I know to be okay.
My name is Tom Guthrie, and I am making this statement of my own free will.
My name is Matt Alling. I play drums for John Spignesi.
Chris Mitchell, keyboards, organs, piano.
You